Canberra Cable had a little illness this weekend as well, and she had to spend a little time in the emergency room with the UTI. It's got the Leland and Cambry this week, and I think she was able to make it home, and she's okay. But Cam, we're glad you're feeling better this morning as well. On Wednesday nights here in the last couple of weeks and throughout the month of July, we've been doing an adult VBS class, and I was thinking about that when we were in VBS growing up, the stories were usually the most exciting stories that we find in the Bible. I would say there's not very many years of VBS that go by that you don't talk about, like David and Goliath. That's a story that is appealing. Maybe the story of Esther and the king is an example. Daniel and the lion's den. Those Old Testament stories really fit sort of the VBS mode, as it were. We're going to talk this morning about an Old Testament figure that probably is not included in the VBS quite often. He's not necessarily included in those sort of courageous stories, but probably should be. We're going to talk this morning about Caleb. It's a name that you may be familiar with. I would say that most of you are more familiar with Joshua than you are Caleb, maybe because there was no book of Caleb a couple pages over in your Bible like there is one of Joshua. But he's who we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about him, his faith, and his courage this morning. His story, full of faith, full of obedience, full of endurance, and full of trust. And his life is changed for the better because of, I guess, decisions he made, or maybe a better way to say it would be challenges that he was prepared to face that some perhaps were not. Let's talk first of all about Caleb and a bit of the story here this morning. I want you to turn in your Bible to Numbers, book of Numbers, chapter 13. That's the fourth book of the Bible. So it's up there near the front, but we don't talk a lot about the book of Numbers, but we're going to be there here this morning. Numbers chapter 13. And if you're in Numbers chapter 13, starting on verse 1, the way it's written bears a striking similarity to Matthew chapter 1, where it lists out the genealogy of Jesus. But this is not listing the genealogy, but rather it's listing a person from each tribe who's about to go face a task. And so as we read this, you'll see the names of every spy sent by Moses into Canaan. Now, I would imagine if you read through there's 12 names or so, but some of those names are probably not very familiar to you. But you'll see that from Judah was sent a man named Caleb. And he's sent to explore this land of Canaan. And if you remember the story, as they've come out of Egypt and as they've wandered around in the desert, then the next stop is the Canaan land. And for the sake of for us, if you know where Israel is today, it's pretty much the same place. There's a little bit of overlap on some boundaries, but for the most part, that's where they're going. That's the promised land, as it were. And so they're going to send people in because while they've been gone, there's other people that are there. There may always have been people that were there. And so Caleb, along with these other spies, are sent in to explore. Now, let's remember the story. You may remember that 10 of the spies came back and they said, we cannot take this place. Okay? Well, I think it's fair to say that that was what their job was, right? Their job was to go in and see, can we take this place? I'm not a military person, but I'm sure there have been military people sent over time that have went into places and they've said, we can't do this. Or if we're going to go, we got to have a lot more, whatever it might be. If you read in the book of Numbers, you'll see that they came back and a couple of things that they reported. They said they've got fortified cities. These cities are we just can't just walk into them. It's going to be too much to take over. They also, some of them said it was a land of giants. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second here as well. But they came back, and I don't know if we want to say the word excuses, but they came back with an explanation as to why they could not take this land. Now keep in mind, 10 of them came back reporting this. Caleb and Joshua came back with a different opinion. Now, do you think that Caleb's opinion, which is we can take this, is naive? Oh. Do you think he didn't see the things that the others had saw? That's not practical. I'm sure if the other 10 saw big cities, then Caleb saw that as well. But Caleb comes back and he says, we can do this. So he's certainly aware of the challenge. He didn't ignore it. But where other spies saw obstacles, Caleb remembered God's power and faithfulness. Jameson talked just a minute ago about on the table here, it says in remembrance, right? And sometimes we lose that word remembrance, right? You say, how many of you have ever said, I completely forgot about that? We've all said it, right? But whatever that is. Well, sometimes even things that are important to us, we forget about. Sometimes things that we thought when we were growing up, we'll never forget this. You can't remember it at all. But Caleb here remembers the power and the faithfulness of God. In Numbers chapter 13 and verse 30, if you jump on down there, it says, then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. So when he says he quieted the people, it certainly feels like there's some argument going on here. If all 12 came back and said we can do it, then let's go. If all 12 came back and said we can't do it, then maybe they're not going. But there's a debated topic here. Yes, we can. No, we can't. They're discussing this as a group. And it sounds like there's some argument. And so what Caleb says, it says that he talked to all the people and he said, let's go right now. He said, let's go at once and take possession. Now, if you've had 10 others come back and say, we can't do it, the cities are fortified, there's a land of giants, which camp do you think you would have fell into? The camp of 10 or the camp of Caleb and Joshua? Well, if we're being practical, if we're being honest with ourselves, that's a pretty tough question to answer. So let's go to Numbers chapter 14, and I want to jump down to verse 6. Numbers chapter 14, and let's jump down to verse 6. And Caleb, the son of Phanuel, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes, and they spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, the land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. We'll stop, and we're going to go right back in just a second. So what Caleb does is speech, right? They give this sort of talk about why they should be able to do it. He said, this is a good land. So we're not going into some junky territory. It's a good land. He describes it as flowing with milk and honey. That's a phrase we still use even to this very day. But notice verse 10. And all the congregation stoned them with stones. Now the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of meeting before all the children of Israel. Caleb boldly declares that victory is possible, not because Israel is strong, but because God was strong. He said that God is with them in so many words. It's a dangerous stand. Does it seem like in verse 10 the people are excited about this move? They seem a little iffy. It makes sense because they said 10 people have come back and said, we can't do this. Which category would we have been in? It's hard to answer that question. Maybe we don't need to answer it right now. But Caleb was prepared to follow fully. What Dad read a few minutes ago in Numbers chapter 14 and verse 24, Caleb is described in a couple of ways. One, he's described as having a different spirit. Think about that for a second. What does the word different mean? You know what it means, right? So he has a different spirit. So Caleb seems to be a different kind of person compared to some of the others. It also says in verse 24 that he followed God fully. Some version of this phrase, that he wholly followed the Lord, is repeated 5 times in the Bible about Caleb. Think about that for a second. 5 different times in some form or fashion, it is said that he wholly followed the Lord. If somebody says 5 different times a description of you, that's probably a pretty good description, right? There might be something that somebody might say once about you, and you're thinking, oh, I don't know if that's right or not, right? You might have seen you do it one time. You know, you might have seen somebody hit a home run in baseball. It's like, man, that's a home run hitter. It's like, nah, I just got lucky. You never hit any more, right? Well, but if you say it multiple times, then that's a pretty good description of Caleb. Some version appears 5 different times. I think this reflects some consistency in him, right? Not just enthusiasm for a single moment. You might have looked and said, Caleb's crazy, right? He comes back, there's no way we can take these people. He's nuts. But if he just wholly followed the Lord, at 5 different times they mention this is not some wacko who thinks they can go do it, but he genuinely believes that they're capable of taking this land. Caleb didn't waver in times of disappointment, and he certainly wasn't swayed by peer pressure. We just read that a second ago. His obedience was total, and he was rewarded. In Joshua, chapter 14, verses 8 and 9, Joshua, of course, along with Caleb, was one of the 2 that come back and say that they're capable of doing it. We'll see what the reward was. Let's turn over to Joshua 14 for just a second. And you'll read here, it says, nevertheless, my brethren who went up with me made the heart of the people melt. And I wholly followed the Lord my God. So Moses swore on that day, saying, trodden shall be your inheritance and your children's, because you have wholly followed the Lord my God. So he goes up and he is presented with this. This is what his inheritance is going to be. So Caleb follows fully. Now, I want us to think about that for just a second, though. Most of us are paid for our jobs, or maybe we draw retirement, but most of us are paid on a fairly consistent schedule. You probably get paid once a week, maybe twice a month. You may get paid once a month, but I guarantee most of you can tell me when the paycheck comes, right? It comes on the first day of the month, or the 3rd day, or the 15th, or whatever it is. You could probably tell me that right now. Some of you do various one-off jobs where you might go do something for a person and then they pay you for doing it. Could be mowing the yard or trimming the hedges. Could be painting or something like that, and they pay you for it. No matter what the case is, we rarely have to wait for our reward. If we think about payment being a reward, we rarely have to wait. If we go back to the previous slide, book of Joshua, chapter 14, Caleb has just been promised an inheritance. So if Caleb has just been promised an inheritance, most of us would think you're going to get that pretty soon, right? The Lord has said, you will get this land. All right, open the doors. Let's go in and get it right now. Well, it's not exactly the way it worked out. Joshua chapter 14, let's drop down a couple verses to 10 and 11. And now, behold, the Lord has kept me alive, and he said notice this number here, 45 years, ever since the Lord spoke this word to Moses while Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now, here I am this day, 85 years old. As yet I am as strong this day as on the day Moses sent me, just as my strength was then, so now is my strength for war, both for going out and for coming in. Now, Caleb waited 45 years for God's promise to be fulfilled. Think about what he endured in 45 years. Wilderness, failure of others, delayed blessings, sort of endless wandering. I want you to think for a second. Do you know what was 45 years ago? 1980. That doesn't seem right, does it? 1980 was like 15 years ago, not 45 years ago. But what have you done between 1980 and today? A lot, right? That's a long time. He has endured for these 45 years. Not only that, it says he is 85 years old. Let me ask it a different way. What if the last time you got paid for work was 1980? You've been waiting on that check for 45 years. Most of us probably wouldn't have waited that long, right? We probably wouldn't want to wait. We'd be mad if the mailman's 45 minutes late, much less 45 years whenever that comes. But Caleb has waited. He has endured. Think about the word endurance for just a second. How important is endurance in Christianity? I think it's of the utmost importance, because endurance means that we're going an extended period. We have to be able to endure whatever that is. You think it's easy? It's not. Nothing's easy that requires endurance. I'm fascinated every 4 years in the Olympics. The only time I ever watch it is the marathon race in the Olympics. A marathon is 26.2 miles. 26.2 miles, a long way. The people that run that race run about 5-minute miles, which is unbelievable in and of itself. Those are not the fastest miles in the world, but they run about 5-minute miles, but they run 26 of them. They're running just as fast at the end as they are at the beginning. If you were to ask me to go out and run 26.2 miles this afternoon, I could hit the 0.2. I might need somebody with the car to take me the other 26 the rest of the way. Got there in 10 minutes. It was the easiest run we ever had, right? But endurance has to be built up. Those people that win the Olympic marathon race, they don't win it the first time they run. You can't. They have to prepare for that. As a Christian, we don't conquer everything as a Christian the first time. Christianity is about endurance, right? It's about going through challenges, because most of the people that run those races, they'll tell you there's a certain point in the race when I about lose it. For some of them, it might be 8 miles. Some of them, it might be 18. But they say at the 18th mile of 26, I don't know if I can go any further. Well, what they've got to do is they've got to practice for when that 18th mile comes. How's that any different for us as Christians? Are there some things as Christians that we're able to do, we don't have a problem with? Absolutely. Are there some challenges that we face as a Christian? Absolutely. So we have to prepare. We have to train ourselves for that. James chapter 1 and verse 12 says, "Blessed is the man who endures temptation. For when he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him." Notice that. It says, blessed is the man who endures, not who completely throws it away, not who never has to face it, but when he endures. And then notice it says, for when he has been approved. Think about that for a second. That doesn't mean it happens immediately. It's going to take a while. But endurance is a part of maturity. Sometimes we start off strong, but then we fade away. I've told this story before, but I ran 1 year of cross country in high school. It was terrible. And I've told you the story that we ran one race, and I said, I want to be in first place. I ran as hard as I could for about 400, 500 yards, and I was winning. And I think it was 5 kids from Western Hills, had green shirts, and every one of them went right by me. I could have high-fived them all as they went. I finished a distant 38th, I'd say. So anyway, I started off strong, but I didn't have the ability to keep going. You ever known somebody who started off strong in their walk with God, but then they faded? What causes it? Discouragement, disappointment, distraction. Those kind of things get difficult. James says, blessed is the man who endures that, for when he's been approved, he'll receive the crown of life. Caleb's strength at 85 wasn't just physical. He was also mentally strong. He was emotionally strong. And he was faithfully strong. Those are important for us today. We can be as strong this way as possible, but don't have anything right here. We have to be strong in all of these categories. And Caleb taught us that it was worth it, not just to endure, but the reward that would come from it. So Caleb receives the reward. It's important to remember the faith of Caleb and Joshua against the lack of faith of the other spies. It's at this point that we would expect that they would be rewarded with the finest land. Think about that for a second. If 2 people said yes and 10 said no, and they go in and take it, and I've sort of spoiled it, but they went in and took it, you would have thought, well, the 2 that said yes, we're going to give you the prime land, as it were. Think about it this way. If you want a prize strip of land in Florida, would you rather it be on the coast or in the swamp? Most of us would probably prefer the coast, right? It's prettier there. The weather's better. What would be? Caleb approaches this in a completely different way. Instead of requesting an easy, a comfortable inheritance, Caleb seems to ask for a challenge. I want you to look at Joshua chapter 14 and verse 12. It seems like he asked for a land that was still full of opposition. Read with me here, Joshua 14 and verse 12. It says, "Now therefore, give me